My child, do not scroll past this moment, because something is shifting behind the silence you thought meant nothing was happening. Pause here, just for a moment, because what you are about to hear was meant to reach the part of you that has been wondering whether your absence has been noticed, whether your quiet has been felt, whether the person connected to your heart has simply moved on as though nothing ever mattered. Heaven is showing a very different picture. Your silence has not disappeared into empty space. It has been echoing somewhere you cannot see. It has been forcing someone to sit with thoughts they once avoided, questions they kept delaying, and feelings they believed they could control. And now, something inside your soulmate is reaching a point where staying still no longer feels possible. There is a reason the energy around this connection feels different now. You may have told yourself that you were simply protecting your peace. You may have grown tired of explaining, reaching, proving, waiting, or wondering what another person was thinking. At some point, your heart became exhausted with carrying conversations that never fully happened. You stopped chasing answers. You stopped trying to force clarity out of confusion. Maybe you said less. Maybe you pulled your energy inward. Maybe you simply decided that if someone truly cared, they would eventually reveal it without being pushed. What you did not realize was that your silence created a space your soulmate could no longer fill with assumptions. Before, they could tell themselves many stories. They could imagine you would always be there. They could believe there would be another chance to speak tomorrow, another opportunity next week, another moment when everything would somehow become easier. They may have assumed your patience had no ending. They may have mistaken your softness for permanence and your emotional availability for something guaranteed. But when your energy became quieter, something changed. The certainty they depended upon began disappearing. Suddenly, they could no longer predict you, and that uncertainty awakened something powerful inside them. At first, they tried to ignore it. They told themselves you were busy. They convinced themselves your distance was temporary. They may even have pretended not to care. But heaven sees what people hide from others, and sometimes even what they hide from themselves. There were moments when your soulmate reached for their phone and stopped. Moments when they almost looked for a sign from you. Moments when they replayed something you once said and wondered whether they had misunderstood its importance. They began noticing the absence of things they once took for granted. Your attention. Your warmth. Your presence. Your ability to somehow make ordinary moments feel emotionally significant. And this is where the story becomes deeper, because your silence did not only make them miss you. It forced them to confront themselves. There is a difference between missing someone and realizing you may have failed to value them properly. Missing can be temporary. Regret reaches deeper. Your soulmate has begun entering a space where they are not merely wondering where you are. They are beginning to ask what their hesitation may have cost them. They are remembering moments when they could have spoken honestly but chose restraint. They are remembering times when they wanted to move closer but allowed fear, pride, confusion, timing, or outside voices to interfere. The mind can justify many things while a person feels secure. But once that security disappears, the heart becomes much more difficult to silence. Something unusual has been happening inside them. The memories are becoming sharper. A conversation that once seemed ordinary now feels important. A look you gave them is returning to their mind. Something you said casually is suddenly sounding different. They are realizing that perhaps you were revealing more than they understood at the time. Perhaps your patience had pain beneath it. Perhaps your calmness was not indifference. Perhaps every time you became quiet, you were waiting to see whether they would finally meet you halfway. That realization is creating pressure. Not dangerous pressure. Not something dark. Something emotional. Something that happens when a person suddenly understands that time does not remain frozen simply because they were afraid to make a decision. Your soulmate has begun thinking about possibilities they once avoided. What if you truly stop waiting? What if another person enters your life and recognizes what they hesitated to recognize? What if the silence that they assumed was temporary becomes your new normal? What if you have already begun healing beyond the point where their return would affect you the same way? These thoughts have been disturbing the comfortable story they once told themselves. And there is one particular thought they cannot seem to shake. They are wondering whether you have finally chosen yourself over the connection. That thought is changing everything. There was a time when they could sense that a part of you was emotionally available to them, even when nothing was being spoken. They felt it in the way you responded. They felt it in your patience. They felt it in the invisible thread between you. But now, something feels less certain. You may still care. You may still think about them. Yet you are no longer sending the same emotional signal. You are not trying to convince destiny to hurry. You are not standing at the same inner doorway waiting for someone else to decide whether they want to enter. And strangely, that is exactly what has made them look toward that doorway again. Heaven sometimes allows silence to reveal what constant communication hides. When two hearts are surrounded by too many words, they can misunderstand the deeper truth. One person speaks from fear. Another responds from pride. One waits for reassurance. Another waits for certainty. Then both begin reacting to reactions instead of listening to the truth underneath. But silence removes distractions. Eventually, all that remains is what someone genuinely feels when there is nobody there to perform for. Your soulmate has been meeting that truth. Late moments have become difficult for them in ways they would never admit publicly. There are hours when the world grows quieter and distractions lose their power. That is when your memory arrives without permission. Not always dramatically. Sometimes through a song. Sometimes through a phrase. Sometimes through seeing another couple speaking openly and wondering why they made something so simple feel so complicated. Sometimes your name appears in their mind at the exact moment they believed they were finally thinking about something else. They have tried to reason with it. They have tried to tell themselves that if something is meant to happen, it will happen naturally. But another voice inside them has started answering, what if naturally still requires courage? That question has become impossible to ignore. My child, understand this carefully. The crazy thing they are considering is not about losing control or creating chaos. It is about doing something that feels completely unlike the version of themselves who has been holding back. Something bold. Something emotionally risky. Something they previously told themselves they would never do unless they were absolutely certain of your response. They are beginning to realize that certainty may never come before action. For some time, they wanted a sign from you first. They wanted you to make the situation easier. They wanted one small indication that they would not be rejected, embarrassed, misunderstood, or disappointed. They may have imagined different ways you could open the door. A message. A reaction. A coincidence. A mutual connection bringing your name into conversation. Anything that would allow them to approach you without feeling fully exposed. But the sign they received was your silence. And that was not the sign they expected. At first, they saw silence as distance. Then they saw it as mystery. Now they are beginning to see it as a challenge to their own courage. Something in them keeps saying, if this person matters, why am I waiting for them to do everything? That thought has been growing. They are starting to understand the imbalance. Perhaps you carried emotional weight for longer than they realized. Perhaps you initiated more often. Perhaps you offered understanding while they offered uncertainty. Perhaps even when nothing obvious happened between you, you were the one holding the emotional connection together through patience, prayer, hope, or simply the refusal to become bitter. Now that you have loosened your grip, your soulmate is finally feeling the weight they allowed you to carry alone. And it is uncomfortable. But discomfort can awaken truth. They have started imagining what they would say if they could speak without fear. The first version was cautious. The next was more honest. Then the words began becoming almost impossible to contain. They have rehearsed conversations that have not happened. In those imagined moments, they tell you things they once avoided saying. They explain why they hesitated. They reveal what was happening behind their silence. They admit that your presence affected them more deeply than they allowed you to see. There is something especially important here. Your soulmate may have spent a long time believing that emotional control meant strength. They thought remaining unreadable protected them. They believed holding back gave them power over uncertainty. But your silence has reversed that dynamic. Now they are discovering that the one who refuses vulnerability does not always remain protected. Sometimes that person simply becomes the one left with everything unsaid. And suddenly, unsaid words are feeling heavy. Your soulmate has been thinking about a moment they wish they could revisit. Heaven is drawing attention to this because it matters. There was likely a point when something between you could have changed direction. Maybe it was a conversation. Maybe it was a brief encounter. Maybe you opened your heart more than usual and they failed to respond with equal honesty. Maybe they sensed that you were giving them an opportunity, but fear made them hesitate. They remember more than you think. At the time, they may have acted unaffected. Inside, however, something happened that they never completely forgot. And now your silence has brought that memory back with new meaning. They are seeing that moment through different eyes. They are understanding what you may have been offering. They are asking themselves why they did not step forward when the door was open. That question has become the beginning of their next move. There is someone around them, or perhaps simply a voice of reason within their own life, that has made them confront the obvious. Someone may have said something simple like, "If you care, why don't you just tell them? It may not have been spoken exactly that way, but something has recently challenged their habit of waiting. It struck a place inside them because they had no satisfying answer. Why haven't they spoken? Why haven't they acted? Why are they still pretending there is unlimited time? They have excuses. Timing. Circumstances. Uncertainty. Pride. Fear of rejection. Fear of being too late. Fear of discovering that your feelings changed. But beneath every explanation, one truth remains. They still care enough that your silence affects them. And because of that, something is building. You may think nothing is happening because there is no visible evidence. But some of the most important decisions begin invisibly. Before a person sends the message, they stare at the screen. Before they make the call, they argue with themselves. Before they show up differently, they spend nights imagining every possible outcome. Before they confess something, they often spend weeks trying not to. Your soulmate appears to be in that invisible stage now. They are closer to action than they have been before. Yet there is a complication. They are afraid you may no longer believe them. This is not only about whether you will respond. They are wondering whether their words could still carry weight after so much silence, hesitation, or inconsistency. They know they cannot simply appear with a few beautiful sentences and expect everything to return to where it once was. Somewhere inside, they understand that if they approach you, they will need to bring more than emotion. They will need sincerity. They will need accountability. They will need to show through action what fear previously prevented them from saying. This realization is why the move they are considering feels so big to them. They do not want to send something ordinary. An ordinary message can be ignored. A casual conversation can hide the truth again. They are considering something that makes their intention clearer. Perhaps a confession more direct than anything they have said before. Perhaps reaching out at a time you would never expect. Perhaps asking to see you. Perhaps finally explaining something you once believed you would never understand. Perhaps admitting that they have been watching this connection slip into silence while pretending they were fine. But there is another layer that heaven is revealing, and this is the part they themselves have only recently recognized. They are jealous of a future that has not even happened yet. Not jealousy in a controlling sense. It is the realization that your life can continue without them. They are imagining someone else hearing your stories. Someone else receiving the tenderness they once had access to. Someone else becoming the person you call when something beautiful happens. Someone else learning the small details about you that they thought they had unlimited time to discover. That possibility has startled them. For the first time, they are not only thinking about losing your attention. They are thinking about losing their place in your future. And that is very different. Your silence has forced them to see you not as someone waiting, but as someone moving. You have changed more than they know. There is a steadiness growing inside you. Even when you still feel emotional, something has become wiser. You are learning that love cannot require you to abandon your dignity. You are learning that spiritual connection does not mean endless confusion should be accepted. You are learning that what is meant for you should eventually meet you with truth, not merely possibilities. Your soulmate can sense that shift, even if they cannot explain how. Perhaps that is why they keep checking for some sign of you. Perhaps that is why certain memories are resurfacing. Perhaps that is why they feel urgency at moments when nothing outward has changed. Because something has changed. You have. And your transformation has altered the connection. My beloved, heaven is not showing this to encourage you to break your silence prematurely. The deeper message is about what your silence has revealed in both of you. It has shown you that you can survive without constant reassurance. It has shown them that they cannot assume your heart will remain waiting forever. It has placed both of you before the truth. Now the next step belongs to courage. And your soulmate knows it. There is a moment approaching when they may have to choose between protecting their pride and risking honesty. They have postponed that choice more than once. But postponement is beginning to feel more painful than vulnerability. Something happened recently that made this especially real. It may have looked insignificant from the outside. They saw something, heard something, remembered something, or had a conversation that suddenly made your absence feel permanent rather than temporary. For a few seconds, they imagined that you had truly moved beyond them. That thought hit harder than they expected. They tried to distract themselves afterward, but it stayed. What if you never reach out again? What if they are waiting for a message that will never come? What if the next chapter of your life begins without them simply because neither person was brave enough to break the distance? This is the question pushing them toward the edge of action. And there is more. Your soulmate has been keeping something from you, not necessarily a dark secret, but a truth about how much this connection has affected them. They have been more emotionally invested than their behavior revealed. They may have appeared calm while privately checking for signs. They may have seemed distant while replaying conversations. They may have acted as though they had accepted the situation while secretly imagining reconciliation, explanation, or another chance. This contradiction has exhausted them. Pretending not to care takes energy when someone actually cares deeply. They are reaching a point where the mask feels heavier than the truth. And your silence has removed the easy option of continuing as before. You are no longer feeding the illusion that nothing has to change. Now they must decide. Stay quiet and risk losing you completely. Or do something bold enough to reveal what has been hidden. That is why their next move may surprise you. Because the version of them you remember may not have been capable of it. But people change when the possibility of loss becomes real. There is a particular conversation forming in their mind, and heaven wants you to understand that it is not simply, "I miss you." It is deeper. There is something they want to explain about why they behaved the way they did. Something about what they were afraid of. Something about what they thought would happen if they became emotionally transparent with you. They thought vulnerability might make them weak. Now they are beginning to understand that silence may have cost them something far more valuable. They are preparing themselves to say what should have been said before. But before that happens, another event is about to test their courage. Something connected to you is likely to reach their awareness. A small update. A change in your energy. A sign that you are genuinely continuing with your life. It may not be dramatic at all, but to them it will feel dramatic because they are already emotionally sensitized to your absence. And when they see it, hear it, or sense it, the remaining hesitation may become much harder to maintain. They will realize the situation is no longer waiting for them. Life is moving. You are moving. Time is moving. And suddenly the message they have been rewriting in their mind may no longer feel optional. There is a reason you have felt drawn toward silence rather than explanation. Something inside you knew that repeating yourself would not create the awakening you wanted. You could not talk someone into emotional readiness. You could not explain your worth until another person finally believed it. You could not keep standing in the doorway asking someone to notice what they were afraid to face. So you became quiet. Not as punishment. As surrender. And surrender has done what pressure could not. It has created truth. Your soulmate is beginning to see what this connection feels like without your effort holding it together. And they do not like the emptiness. The strange part is that they thought they wanted space. Now that they have it, they are discovering how much of that space was once filled by you. Your laughter. Your attention. Your emotional presence. Your ability to understand what they did not say. Your way of making them feel seen even when they were not ready to admit they needed to be seen. Those things are becoming more valuable in absence than they ever appeared in abundance. This is why they have started remembering details. The way you reacted to certain things. The way you became quiet when hurt. The way you tried to remain kind even when confused. The way you gave them room rather than forcing answers. The way your eyes, words, or energy seemed to say more than your actual conversations allowed. They are realizing there were messages inside those moments. Messages they were too distracted or afraid to read. And now they are reading them backward. This is often how regret works. Understanding arrives after the moment has passed. But regret does not always mean the story is finished. Sometimes it becomes the beginning of courage. Your soulmate is approaching that threshold. There is one thing, however, they still do not know. They do not know what your silence truly means. Are you protecting yourself? Are you waiting? Are you healing? Are you letting go? Are you hoping they finally step forward? They cannot tell anymore. And that uncertainty is driving them toward the action they previously avoided. They want an answer. But more than that, they want another chance to influence what that answer becomes. This is where their crazy idea begins. They are considering abandoning subtlety. The hints have failed. The waiting has failed. The internal conversations have gone nowhere. Something in them is saying that if they reach for you again, it must be unmistakable. No confusing signals. No half-truths. No hiding behind casual language. They may do something completely unexpected for their personality, something that exposes just how deeply your silence has affected them. And before you assume you know what that means, there is another piece you have not yet seen. Because the bold move itself is not the biggest revelation. The biggest revelation is what they are planning to tell you when they finally have your attention. There is a sentence they have never said to you. They have thought it. They have almost admitted it. They have buried it beneath timing, pride, distance, and uncertainty. But lately, that sentence has been returning again and again, especially when your silence feels loudest. And now, for the first time, they are beginning to believe they may actually say it. Yet even they do not realize that when those words finally come forward, they will reveal something much bigger than missing you. They will reveal why they were afraid of you from the beginning. Not afraid of who you are. Afraid of what loving you might require them to become. And the truth behind that fear is where everything changes.